Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we're doing a little bit of tier list fun. I love doing the tier list. They're just some of the most fun videos to make personally. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff to get through, so I don't want to take too much time with the intro here. Basically, what we're going through today is every deck that has like stuff coming, whether it's legacy support, whether it's a brand new archetype. Everything that we know about at this point in time. It is almost April. We're at the very end of March here in 2024, hopefully, and then hopefully we get more stuff soon. We should be getting a big reveal of like Infinite Forbidden reveals and maybe more Duelist pack reveals and stuff like that. Animation Chronicle at some point as well, but until we get that, we can look at those when they come. But today we're looking at everything that's already been revealed. There's a ton of stuff coming. It's actually a really good amount of stuff, of like solid decks or decks that like are not bad and then are not good and then finally get support to move them up. So that's what we're talking about today. This is where I think these things rank post their support. This isn't necessarily judging the support as a whole. So let's just get into it. Starting off first, I have Fiend Smith here. I'm really undecided. Honestly, tier 1.5 is kind of like a potential kind of tier for me. These are the archetype. These are like the themes that I think maybe should be solid, should be tier 2, or should find their place in a tier 2 deck at the very least. This one's a weird one just because it's a new engine and it's not even enough to be its own deck at all, but I do think has a chance to be splashed in some engines to really help cover up a weakness. I think it has a real good chance of being a Horus-esque engine that really helps certain decks cover their weaknesses with what it does. So I'm going to put it in tier 1.5 for now. Just generic engine, can splash really easily, no locks or anything. It does hurt decks in terms of how they play into Droll and certain things, but it also allows certain decks to beat Nib consistently. So you're trading payoffs, but I think it's pretty good overall. Drytron. Man, honestly, I still think Drytron's rogue. I still don't even think Drytron's tier 2 with their new support. I think the support's okay until I can be proven wrong. I just feel like with Bestials in the game, which didn't even exist the last time Bestials or Drytron actually got power crept out, I'm just not sure like the new support they got is quite strong enough to like push them past the point where like something like Bestials can't balance it out. I just think those cards are really, really tough to handle. Shifter's still out and about. Droll, this is also a deck that doesn't appreciate Droll, and Droll's been like a very prominent card in the last couple formats. I don't expect that to super change going forward, so I'm just not that high. I'm not high enough to put it in tier 2, basically. Exodia, this is rogue. Exodia is a real rogue deck now. Yes, you have to play some bricks. That's terrible. But honestly, as far as the engine cards go, assuming they were never going to build an Exodia archetype that made it so you didn't have to play the pieces, they did about as good as I could have hoped, honestly. And Rogue is about as good as I could have hoped. So it's cool. If you're an Exodia fan, that's awesome, because like you can legit take this deck to locals, and I think you can legitimately win a locals with this. Maybe even top a regional on a really good day. So yeah, it's cool. Next up, Gimmick Puppet. This one's weird. I don't know exactly how to feel about this one. I know they have some degenerate setups they can go for. I'm going to put it into tier 2. I don't necessarily fully believe that they're going to go all the way to tier 1. I think they have some good stuff. Their support seems to really give them some really degenerate like pieces to like win going first, like FTK type stuff, as well as this deck has always been more geared towards going second. So they have some extending tools, some big boss monsters that you can just summon and resolve. It's pretty strong. Plus the field spell's out of this world crazy. Like it basically makes all your guys a towers. While also just being a searching field spell. It's a consistency card that then just helps you like break boards. You cannot let that card resolve, right? If they're playing it into your board. Okay, next up you have the new gold Sarcophagus of Light archetype. This is like Yugi Moto's new archetype where they kind of took all of a lot of the cards he used in the final duel in the anime and turned it into a cohesive archetype. It's pretty cool. Has some cool things to it. For me, it still ends up in Rogue though. I don't think it's so bad that it's poop, but it does some things. It just doesn't do enough. It doesn't actually do enough. I do think there's potential that it could be abused as like a cool engine combined with other stuff, but the payoff on its own isn't there, and I'm still weary that the engine's just not doing enough anyway to play with another strategy. But it's cool. It definitely has some legs here. It's about the same level as Exodia, I think. Ancient Gear is interesting. Again, I feel like we're going to end up with a lot of rogue stuff here, but that's just because that category to me is just so huge. Maybe I could have made a different tier where one's like low level rogue and one's like high level rogue, but yeah, I guess it depends on what your classification is. I think all these kind of fit close together. Ancient Gear, I think, becomes like a playable rogue deck. I don't think it's great. I think it really has to go second. I do think that like maybe there's a world where like an Earth Machine variant can maybe make use of some of the new Ancient Gear stuff. But it really didn't move the needle for me that much. I thought the support was fine, but it didn't do that much for me. Yeah, I mean, this is just a new Snake Eyes card. Snake Eyes is the best deck in the game. It's tier 0. Yeah, I mean, like, to be honest, this could have been a completely useless card, and they'd still stay until tier 0. But I have seen some OCG lists at least teching one of this guy. He's like kind of basic kind of extender. He's a simple like extender for the deck, I think. Yeah. Yubel. I'm going to put Yubel in tier 1. I think there's definitely an argument to put it in tier 1.5 or tier 2 if you're really low on it. I'm pretty high on it. I think the only thing I have trepidation about is consistency and the fact that the deck does play some like bricks that you really don't want to draw, like a little handful. But I also think the deck has enough power cards, and you're utilizing some like Unchained stuff, so you also have some potential. And the Yubel cards in general have potential going second. You can main deck something like Super Poly as well as have like still fit like a handful, like a good amount of hand traps in the deck at the same time. I just think I think it really is strong. The new contact fusible like fusion monster is crazy. That card is so strong. In my opinion, it makes it so the deck can like beat Nib consistently. It makes it so even when you stop them, you don't really stop them, kind of thing, because they can still get to that basically any turn, even if you double hand trap into Nib, like triple hand trap, but including Nib. So you like took everything. They still probably have material to just like banish, make a monster negate. And you're still just playing into a monster negate at the very worst. You've used 3 cards in your hand. They could have a hand trap in hand and a monster negate now. Like you have 3 cards to beat 2 interruptions. I think that's decent. I think that's pretty good because that's like your worst case scenario. But your best case scenario is like your boards are just better. Your boards are more safe. You're able to set up like a negate before Nib much more often now. I think it's like legit. And plus the new rank 10 helps them out a lot. Both the new cards, the new monster, the Grave Squirmer, and the field spell, really, really strong. I just really think the deck's in a good place. I'm curious if it'll get there in the OCG, because it is a deck that wants to spam the board a lot. Doesn't play too nicely with Max C. But I do think it's also like a deck that, with minimal summons, could set up the monster negate. So like your opponent may not draw too much before you're actually able to and you can at least get to a monster negate, which can be okay. Yeah, but I think it has legit good shot in TCG. Excited to see where it goes. Valmonica for me, this is rogue still. I think the support was nice. It's a good step in the right direction, but they needed another wave on that level to finally get them there. Their deck doesn't do anything until you get all those counters and stuff. They really just don't do much, and so. The support helped, but I still think they have to get so far just to get not even, in my opinion, doesn't feel like they get that much payoff anyway. So they're like low ceiling, and they don't even get there that easily. So not for me. Melodious for me, I'm going to put it in tier 1.5. You guys know I'm high on Melodious as well. Feel free to disagree. This could be a tier 2, but I think it's above Rogue. I think it's going to be. I think so many people are sleeping on this. I've seen people say the engine's not strong enough. I don't think I think there's different ways you can measure an engine's strength. In terms of the overall output, does it put up 5 negates if it doesn't get touched by a hand trap? No. Its overall ceiling is lower, but I think what's so insane is with only 23 engine cards, this deck consistently shits on hand traps. It's so good against hand traps for the amount of engine you play. And I think that's the biggest strength it has, so that you can still play 17 non-engine and still consistently beat hand traps with the 2023 engine you play. That's why I think it has a chance versus Snake Eye, because you could easily see 2-3 hand traps in any given hand and still beat 1 to 2 hand traps with your hand. And that's a favorable like math equation sometimes. It doesn't have the overall ceiling, but I think it has enough of a ceiling. I think the ceiling is just high enough that combined with like the durability of beating interaction is enough to actually make this deck a really solid rogue option. Memento. I think Memento's interesting. I can't quite move them up to tier 2 at this point. They're going to fall into the rogue category. But again, this is a very similar thing to Valmonica for me, but I think I'm a little more optimistic here. Second wave, really nice. Really, really close. It just feels like this deck doesn't even have a payoff. Like, what are you getting to? It feels like you have to get to that boss monster, but if your opponent just saves the interaction and knows how the deck works, they can probably just keep you off of that boss monster. And so it feels like the deck doesn't have a great backup plan if they don't get that set up. That's my one thing, is if someone can keep you off of the big guy, is there some backup plan where you're like, I can still set up 2-3 interactions that are just like weird little ones, but it works. It feels like the deck doesn't really facilitate that quite as well. So again, one more push on a solid level, and I do think this deck could be something really interesting, because I do think they have a good amount of good cards. They're just not there for me just yet. Tenpai Dragon. This is an easy tier 1. We've been seeing this in the OCG right now. This deck is going crazy. The amount of non-engine this deck can play is out of this world. They have so many one-card starters that basically allows them to go off and not need to play so much engine. So I'm seeing 20 plus non-engine cards in a lot of the Tenpai Dragon lists. And listen, that's not even including like the fact that you could just try and play some Dragon Link stuff on top of that if you want. Right? So there's definitely wiggle room as well. It just seems very malleable. It has this one card play, and the non-engine is just so vast that you can just really tailor it to whatever specific metagame or event you're trying to bring it to. I think this deck will be pretty good. I definitely underestimated this one at the beginning. Trickstar. Oh, man. Man. This one's really tough. I'm going to put Trickstar in Rogue right now. I do think it's higher Rogue at the moment. I've already made a video going over like the whole reason why I think this deck is better. I just think this deck gets free wins all the time. And that's like, those are just the free wins you get just because you're playing Trickstar, not even factoring in how good is the deck, how good is the engine, all the other factors. You just get free wins all the time from Trickstar, and I think that already gives them such a high floor that I think they have a good chance. Plus, I think they can play a lot of non-engine, and I think the engine is just slightly good enough now that it can like be good enough. Not super high ceiling or anything, but definitely has some powerful cards. They're also still missing one card, and that's why I think like if the last card is a banger, I could easily see it actually being a tier 2 deck. But right now, I'm not going to assume anything. I'm just going to leave it at high Rogue, and I think you could take this to a regional with the support it already has. But depending on that last card, things could change. We'll see. Centurion. This is an easy 1.5. Oh, wait. This isn't Centurion. Sorry, these synchros look the same. This one is the Gold Pride cards. Rogue. These don't really change much for the deck, to be honest. I was really underwhelmed with these, so the deck doesn't really move. Centurion, 1.5 for sure. I really hope with this wave of support we finally see on a newer ban list some way down the line Calamity getting banned, because that's just a dumb win condition, and like why would you ever be making these cards when you could just be setting up Calamity lines? So I don't want them out together, because these cards become less relevant if Calamity already exists, because like why even go for other win conditions? That's obviously the best win condition. So hopefully they go that route, because I think these cards may help enough where the deck's still a really good like mid-range deck without a dumb win condition. Lightsworn's fun. I think they're a cool rogue deck. I still don't think they're going to be consistent enough to tier 2. It's still a mill deck, but it's not. It's just bad tier limit. I'm sorry. I think it's cool. I think they do some fun stuff. I think you could take it to a regional, but it's not enough, man. It's not enough. Yeah. All right. Goblin Biker. They're going to stay in rogue. This new wave of support. Duty. I almost want to put them in poop just because of how bad this support was, and it made me so angry, because it's one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite archetype from the Diabellstar lore. And the first wave had real potential. Everybody recognized that it had solid potential. And like, if the second wave's crazy, we could be in position. And the second wave was like nothing. We may not ever play a single card from the new wave. Maybe you play the trap, but the new Exodia is terrible. So they don't move. They stay in rogue. If we're in a really XYZ heavy format, they become more interesting. But until then, they're chilling. Voiceless Voice stays in tier 1.5. Oh, man, actually, I'm going to put them in tier 1. Yeah, performing like a top 5 deck in the OCG, performing like a top 5 deck right now in the TCG. These cards only help. The new trap that got revealed a couple days ago, not moving the needle for me really at all. But this new spell is fine. It's a one-of you'll probably play in most Voiceless, Voiceless. It's a cool card for them, but the other cards don't really matter that much. The deck's just already that good. Sinful Spoil stuff. So I'm kind of this separate from Snake Eye because the Sinful Spoil stuff, in a way, functions as a separate engine. It's already tier 0 just because of how good it is, but I do want to say that I don't think it changes that much. Like, I know some people think that this new Diabell's monster is crazy, but the problem is this card doesn't have Diabell Star in the name, so it's not like searchable and summonable that way, nor you basically have to like search the trap off of Diabell Star. There's like a new trap that says summon a level 5 or higher illusion monster from deck. So then you just summon this. And then this is like a pseudo anti-spell fragrance for your opponent, but you have to play like 2 pseudo bricks in the deck just to have an only going first plan. Basically, these cards don't really do anything, don't do much going second. So I don't love it. I just don't really see it. I get it. Like in theory, they can be kind of powerful situationally, but I just don't think they're the kind of cards you're going to want to put in any main deck. And so I don't think they change that much. If Konami really like goes hard on like hitting the Simple Spoils engine, that could go down, but I don't think these help that much. Raika's really fun to me. I'm going to put Raika in tier 2. This one's kind of optimistic, but I do think just the fact that this deck cannot play with Maxi. Maxi decimates this deck. It's a super heavy Link deck that wants to summon like 15 times, and it just can't with Maxi. So this card is kind of this is one of the archetypes that gets gate kept by Maxi a little bit. Plus, I love that it can combine with a bunch of other engines because it just works with any like plant, insect, or reptile strategy. It doesn't even need that many crazy like main deck cards because you can just use any already existing strategy that plays with those types of monsters and like already have good engines to get you into these guys. Yeah, still excited to see what their support is in Infinite Forbidden, but I do think they're like a really cool new strategy. I think they actually have really good potential. They're just new Tri-Brigade. Infernoid, I'm going to put into tier 2. I don't think I could put them as high as 1.5. I think the biggest problem I have with them is they can't play that much non-engine, which does make it tough as formats change, as formats evolve. They can't adjust that much to every format because they have to play their engine. But I do think they're powerful for what they are. And if it is a format, then maybe they can move up as high as 1.5, maybe even 1 in a particular format where it has good matchups. But I think tier 2 is probably a safe bet. Genex, man. I'm going to put Genex in poop, actually. And you know what? It's a good poop because based on how the new cards work, I don't want them to be good because it's like it's another like stupid one. Every card in the deck is a 1-card combo, and you just go crazy if you just normal summon a Genex monster, basically. That's not where we want to be. That's not the kind of decks we want in the game. I'm okay with this being poop. You know, it's the fact that they do any plays whatsoever are fine, but the deck crumbles to like 1 hand trap. So I don't think it can be competitively good. I don't even think at a rogue level it can be good because like you're going to go to an event, and even if you win die rolls, all you have to do is run into 1 hand trap and you scoop. Like, that's pretty bad. Ritual Beast. I think Ritual Beast is a legit tier 2. Maybe even tier 1.5, depending on the way you look at it. So I think in terms of representation, it'll be closer to tier 2, maybe even Rogue, because this deck has such a high learning curve, and it's so hard to play the way this deck plays. It's like, it takes a lot of effort and practice. I think a lot of people just say, hey, you know what? I get 95% of what this deck does by playing Flu, and it's so much easier. It's so much more linear and simple. I don't have to go through the effort of playing Ritual Beast, but I do think if a player were to sit down and really, really get nitty-gritty, get good with Ritual Beast, a high-level player, I think that player would have a higher ceiling with this deck than they would with Flu. I just think it's a better shifter deck. But you have the long turns, you do a bunch of combo stuff, you have to learn the deck, it's hard. I think that's a deterrent. So I don't think it'll see as much representation, even though I do think the right player with this deck is better than the right player with Flu. I do. That's where I stand right now. And then Ice Barrier. I think Ice Barrier probably also landed in tier 2 for me. I don't think it'll get that high. I think there's a world where maybe it's 1.5 at some point, but I think it's real. I think it's a real deck to look out for sure. They do some really powerful things. They can set up some scary floodgate monsters. They play through interaction pretty well. They even have a really cool combination with Runic. Depending on, if Runic gets hit on the ban list or anything, or if Runic's actually good in a format. Right now we're in super heavy hand trap format, so Runics just are not good enough going second. But if they're good again, I think this becomes like a really cool strategy. Plus it can play Pure pretty well as well. So Yeah, I think that's literally everything. Those are basically all the cards we know about that are like confirmed coming at some point in the future here. We're obviously going to get more stuff revealed, but this is where I land on it. It's pretty good stuff. I mean, listen, shout out to Konami. I mean, and to be fair, I kind of ignored a lot of stuff that was just so clearly poop, and I wouldn't even need to discuss it. But I mean, look at this. Look at how much stuff is at least like Rogue. And to be fair, not a lot of these things moved necessarily. I guess Lightsworn kind of moved. Trickstar moved. Memento went from poop to Rogue. Valmonica went from poop to Rogue. Exodia pooped to Rogue. This didn't even exist. Yeah, there's and Ancient Gear. There's a handful. A lot of these went from really bad to pretty good. I mean, look at this whole row is basically all stuff that was unplayable moved to like solid, new, unplayable. This has been good for a while. Good for a while. Okay, but now really good. Didn't exist. Now it's good. Any of these. So honestly, shout out to Konami. A lot of cool stuff down the line. If we get the right ban list that kind of puts Snake Eye a little bit more in check, doesn't have to kill him, but like reels him back a little bit. We have a lot of cool strategies that are coming up that would be able to compete if the ceiling of the format gets lowered just a little bit. So I'm excited for it. Let me know your thoughts on the tier list down below. If you agree with everything, cool. I doubt it. If you disagree with anything, let me know your thoughts down below. What you would change. I'm very curious about that. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.